Hi everybody, welcome back to the homestead. I'm kneeling in front of a plant guild that I installed a couple days ago, which is anchored by a pear tree behind me here. So what a guild is a collection of plants essentially that work together in harmony, much like it would in nature. So if you look into the forest around me here, you have multi-species and they end up supporting each other, playing different roles in the ecosystem. Callie, you're breathing a little bit too heavy. Can you go fetch for it? Where is it? That's a very loud breathing you have. I know it's hot. We're gonna go swimming, okay? Do you wanna go to the beach? You wanna go to the beach? Okay, go get your toy. Go get it, pup. Where'd you put it? There's one there, right there. Callie? Back, 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 back. No, far back. Far back, 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 back. Sorry about that. If you look in the forest around me, you'll see multiple species at different levels as well. So food forest essentially is those multi-layers. So what we're trying to do is create a system of food production that mimics what you see in nature. And specifically here, I can give you an example of how this forest progressed. I found evidence as I've been clearing this garden over the last 4 years. And when I was building the chicken coop and the chicken run there, I found a barbed wire fence buried, just a strand of it, buried in the soil. From what I can tell, about 150 years ago, this land was granted as a homestead, was cleared and used for probably, at the time, they would have tried growing crops likely at the beginning in order to secure their ownership, the title to the homestead, and then would have realized how poor the soil is and the conditions are here for growing, and that it eventually became looks like I would say a pasture. And I found a horseshoe. Maybe it was just for horses as well. Maybe it wasn't even good enough for raising cattle on or holding cattle on. So in other words, at least this section was cleared at one point. And then what happened is pioneer species would have taken over. So down in the north side, this is a north slope, northwest, and then it goes north slope there. You have trees that are not as big as they are sort of up here on the level ground where it's facing south. So here you have pioneer species that are just declining now. They're just starting to die. So the pioneer species would be the trees that could withstand or that need sunlight, so they're shade intolerant. So the birches in particular and the aspens, poplars, they would have grown up first. They're at that age now, they're starting to die. These successional trees would have been the sugar maple. Well, red maple would have been a pioneer species as well, and they're also starting to deteriorate. And they're being replaced by oak, sugar maple, some white pine, and beech, although all the beeches are dying. Up here we got more beech. So the succession would have been pasture, let's say that's what it was, and then herbaceous plants. So as the animals were taken off or the land was abandoned, which it looks like it was for 100 years, the herbaceous plants would grow up. So you would have a number of forbs, wildflowers, and a lot of raspberry, likely blackberry, ferns in this area, like in this acidic landscape, white birch, paper birch, ironwood, aspen, lots of poplar for sure, balsam fir. It's one of the main quicker species to get established here to take over. That would have started growing up. All the blackberries and raspberries would have been first, and then they would have died off as they got shaded out. Elderberries, and then the more shade tolerant species like the oaks and the sugar maples, like I said, the beech, yellow birch, they would have started to grow up and then would replace, shade out those shade intolerant species like those pioneer trees like the birches and so on, would have shaded those out, and then became a upper canopy, dense enclosed canopy forest, in which you see over, which is where my maple sugar grove is. So those high sugar maple trees form dense canopy with the beeches. There's a couple of cherries in there, and then they shaded everything else out. All the herbaceous stuff at the ground level died because it's not getting any sunlight. So essentially you get sort of a desert underneath the high canopy trees. So with nothing growing at that level, there's nothing for the deer and the turkeys and bears and stuff to eat, so they move on. So the point being is that there's sort of a structure that's going on in the forest and an evolution that's going on in the forest all the time. So we're trying to recreate that in our food production systems in a food forest, permaculture food forest system like this. So our most productive areas typically are riparians, like the wetlands, so you get a lot of species growing with lots of moisture and lots of sunlight because they're open. That's probably the most productive in this area. And then you get these successional forests, but the edge habitat is the most productive, especially at first. And an edge is basically a transition between one ecosystem and another, one ecozone and another. So on this edge now, what we have is the mature forest. You got this hard edge in this case, and I'm softening that edge. I'm feathering it by having an understory tree level. So my fruit trees along the perimeter and hazelnut bushes, sea buckthorn, blueberries and things like that. That is the shrub layer, and then it comes into the herbaceous layer where we have things like this yarrow behind me, comfrey, annual vegetables and so on. And then you have the root layer underneath and vining layer. Up the fence posts here I have a hardy kiwi in this case, and then grapes over here. So all these multiple layers in the forest is what we're creating. Now a plant guild specifically is like a little cluster of plants that's trying to mimic nature, trying to mimic that structure. So I have my fruit tree here. This is a bosc pear. Got another pear right there so they can cross-pollinate. Got all this yarrow here that I transplanted from the rest of the garden. It's been here 2 or 3 years, so I'm able to just dig that up and transplant it into this garden. It'll do fine. It's a nitrogen fixer, so what it's doing is taking airborne nitrogen and fixing it through bacteria, with bacteria in the root system. That's converting it to a nitrogen that's actually plant available to the roots of the plants surrounding it, like this pear. Now it also attracts and feeds beneficial insects, so hoverflies and other predatory insects that feed on the bad insects that are attacking the plant. Kelly's coming to visit. Now the other plant I've got here is lavender, English lavender actually, so Lavandula gustifolia. Hey pup. Hey, did you have fun today? You go swimming? Okay. Stand corrected on that Bos Pear. See, it actually says -34 Celsius on there, which is, that would be zone 4. So, I got hair, Kelly's hair on my face now. What are you doing, pup? English lavender, yeah, it doesn't do typically very well here. It's a zone 4 plant, and it's a zone 5 plant, and we are zone 4. The reason it does overwinter typically is that we have good snow cover to insulate it, so it's well protected because it dies back down to the ground, and then, or close to the ground, and then gets covered over by the snow, so it's insulated. But it's really beneficial as well. Repels insects like mosquitoes and some other bad bugs, but it also provides nectar and food for a lot of good bugs. So it attracts good bugs, repels some bad bugs. So very versatile in the garden for that reason. It also repels deer, which this being outside of the deer fence is important. This whole section is more vulnerable. Now I do have several fruit trees in here. Callie typically is able to keep the deer away. We haven't had an issue. In fact, haven't had an issue outside the garden, but last year they did get in through the opening here that I didn't have closed over. Then they kind of got trapped in there, and when I went in to kind of herd them out, they barreled over the deer fence and knocked it over. Plastic fence down at the other end. But outside the fence here, it's definitely beneficial to have deer repelling plants, or at least not attract them to the area, because the fruit trees already attract them. Lavender is an antiseptic, an anti-inflammatory, and great for aromatherapy, for relaxation. So this St. John's wort, you saw me dig it out of the garden and transplant it to this garden. It is suffering. You can see a lot of the leaves are yellowing. I don't think that was happening before I dug it up, but the flower buds were getting ready to open. I see one did open just today, so we'll see. Unfortunately, horrible time again to transplant into planted garden at the heat of the summer, but it's just where I'm at this point. So transplanting, it's definitely going to set it back. It's going to suffer from transplant shock. I have to keep watering it really well, although the rain that's coming in tonight for the next few days is perfect timing. Anyway, the energy is going into flowering instead of into root. In the back here, which is still part of the same guild, the roots are going to travel, of course, under the fence. Even though this looks like a visual barrier, it's not a barrier to the plants and the soil ecosystem underground. Blackberry, thornless blackberry along the fence. once it's more established, I'll just keep training it up to probably 2 stems, 2 stalks, and then cut that back each year because it fruits on second year wood. That'll be trained along the fence. I've got more yarrow there. I have comfrey, some coming up along the fence right there, and also back here. Again, the roots will find that dynamic accumulator of nutrients, which means that the comfrey sends big tap roots way down into the soil, into the subsoil, and draws those nutrients up into its leaves. So then when it's cut back, which I do 2 or 3 times a year, cut it back and use it as a mulch. This yarrow is definitely suffering from the transplant as well. The other thing is that there's a lot of wood chip still in this soil, and it's, I think, eating up a lot of the nitrogen. So as it decomposes, it uses nitrogen because it's a straight carbon source. So I'll have to put some compost on this, but anyway, it will recover and the soil will get better as that decomposes on the top. It's just that transplanting those in, I didn't put them very deep into the subsoil or into the quality soil. So the roots are kind of competing with the wood chip to some degree. Yeah, there's a comfrey right there. You'll see throughout the garden that the fruit trees, I have these guilds around each one of them. Got an apple tree right there, the other pear right there, apple, 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 plum, plum, nectarine, cherry, and another, I think, nectarine or apricot, and then pawpaw, pawpaw, and then blueberry bushes all the way down the line. New ones that I just planted over the last couple of days, including just finished a row right now, another 40 something. Josta berries, just picked those. Those are ripening right now. That's a hybrid between a gooseberry and a currant. It's really tart, but it has sweetness, and I actually really enjoy the flavor. The blueberries are ripening right now, so I'm starting to harvest them. And I've got hardy kiwi starting to climb the fence posts behind you. I've got 3 of them, which is actually too many for there, but you do need a male and a female so that they pollinate. So I'm not sure anymore which one's the male, which one's the female, or whether, I know they're not all of the same gender, so I know that for sure. So I'll just see what happens over time. I might have to take one out or prune them back. It's just going to be a lot of growth for that fence. Yeah, fruit. So basically that's my guilds, but as I was saying, they kind of tie together. So I have these fruit trees spaced like that's maybe 15 feet, 10 feet, down to like 8 feet in some cases. I'll prune them to be small trees. A good book if you're interested in growing fruit trees in a small space is, I'll put a link to it. I think it's Grow a Small Fruit Tree or something like that. Very appropriate title, but anyway, I learned some of my pruning techniques from that book. So anyway, the guilds are built around each tree, but then they flow into the next tree. So you get a continuous flow of multi-species working together to fix nitrogen, improve the soil, mine nutrients, attract beneficial insects to fight off the bad insects. I don't spray anything. I don't own any spray. I don't even know what you would spray on a garden because I've never bothered doing the research because I've never intended on spraying. So I don't use any chemicals in the garden. So that's it. That's my latest fruit tree guild, and likely will be the last one I plant this year. And who knows, next year I have a feeling I'll be clearing more space to add more trees and more gardens. Anyway, I'm going to get back to work. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you back here on the homestead next time. Take care.